opportunity, and I shared that with you at our last meeting in May, had an opportunity to visit with Craig Sadonico, the mayor, Kevin Steiner from West Bend Mutual, as well as Tim Schmidt from Delta Defense. They're forming a committee to look at our facilities. They have asked to have access to our facilities and an opportunity to visit with Mr. Ross to discuss projects that have been completed as well as projects that are being planned. There is no district involvement with the committee. The committee will submit a report in September and or October. The board can use all of or part of the information as the board determines future facilities improvement. So I appreciate their willingness to come forward and to help us out. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin and Tim.
Thank you, Superintendent. Thanks, School Board, for allowing Tim and I the opportunity to speak to you tonight, answer a few questions. As Don said, Craig and Tim and I got together after the referendum to talk about perhaps what we could do as a community to help move our district forward. And this idea of creating an independent task force to examine the West Bend schools, specifically Jackson and the high school, is what came out of those conversations. And so, as Don said, this is a private task force that will provide independent findings relative to the long-term sustainability and capital improvements at Jackson Elementary and the West Bend High Schools. It's certainly our goal, and it is our goal, is that we will not make recommendations to the school board. Instead, we'll present findings within the context of the district's long-range improvement plan. We know that the school board was elected to make decisions, and so with that, we just want to offer independent thoughts and findings that will help you draw your own conclusions and obviously take action accordingly. So, Tim, anything to add?
Sure, I'll try to add some value here. Kevin pretty much summed it up perfectly, but from my perspective, I remember in April when the referendum failed, I felt sad and frustrated, and I'm like, man, what the heck? From my perspective, and albeit it's selfish, I want West Bend to have schools that people talk about. When I try to attract people to come to work here, I don't want them to have to go to Slinger. I want them to stay in West Bend. Now, granted, throwing money at school infrastructure doesn't necessarily solve, make a school better, but it's certainly a part of it. So I'm excited to be a part with Kevin and Craig, as well as the group of other private citizens and other business owners that are going to come together and really just try to help support you guys. And I think that we can help out and work together and come up with something that the community can all get behind. Thank you.
Are you guys willing to take any questions while you're here?
Certainly.
Of course.
I guess my first question is, are you off and running with this task force? Do you have a group of individuals in mind or planned, or how big is it?
Right, so the committee has been chosen, so it's construction experts, facility management, communication experts, and so it's really a diverse group of people, and that we have met, and they're all on board, anxious to get going, obviously, first with your support, and so that's in place. We know we were scheduled to meet tonight. There's actually a press release that I can leave with you that we would intend to release, actually, I think perhaps tomorrow.
Correct.
And so we would like to obviously let the community know that there's this private group behind the efforts of the school board to make the best decisions for our community, our schools, and so yeah, so we're ready to roll.
And if I could just add one thing, so in terms of messaging, certainly, although we've kind of already got this started, it's very important to us and all the folks on this team that we want people to understand that we're supporting you. This isn't like this rogue group of folks doing their own thing. We're working to support the school board.
Well, first, thank you for the support. And second, not to give you more work since you're all volunteering your time, but I heard that you spoke of Jackson and the high school. I think we can probably all agree that Silverbrook and Badger are probably in pretty good shape, but I wonder if there's any opportunity for you to take a look and include in your time and study the other elementary schools that I'm sure are in need of some repair as well, or some updates. And we're looking at everything on a whole, and the community's kind of coming together on this one. I wonder if you might have time to take a look at those schools as well.
So, thanks, appreciate the question. We actually had that discussion, and I think initially our thought was to focus the group on Jackson and the high school, but certainly I would say that this group is very willing, and perhaps that's a conversation we can have with the group as we go forward. And it sounds like there's other opportunities for us maybe to have an impact. We'd like to demonstrate that this is helpful and allow you to still do your job, And so certainly, we thought, you know, Jackson and West Bend and the high school was a good way to start, but I certainly believe there's opportunities for us to maybe move beyond that, so.
Yeah, I mean, I, as only speaking for myself as a school board member, would really appreciate that. I mean, I think that there are opportunities there, and I think that when we can come together as a community as a whole, so maybe my child doesn't attend Jackson, but my child attends McLean or Fair Park or whatever it might be, to potentially have all of that buy-in, I think could be really beneficial for the future.
Right.
So Nancy, one other component, so there's been discussion among the small group that it's critical that we kind of address it from a clean slate mentality. So we don't use April, the referendum, as some, starting point, but rather no, let's just wipe the slate clean and figure out, from our perspective, here's what we think. And again, that's just a data point, but you guys can use that.
Right.
I will also say that there's actually a couple of the committee members that have worked with Mr. Ross, I think in the past, on the long-range facility plan, and so there actually is some knowledge from this group who perhaps can also, along with obviously the expertise from Mr. Ross, bring some expertise to how far we've come, so.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Chris.
I just had a comment about just to thank you for, these are some of the largest employers in our county that have huge facilities, so, your knowledge and findings on a committee will be, I think, very beneficial to us, and maybe just for the public listening. Anybody's been at Jackson at let out time and see the safety concerns of kids crossing the street and drop-off zones. So there's just a bunch of safety concerns at both our high school in Jackson and other facilities. And if you've been in some of these mechanical rooms in our schools, we have equipment from 1940s and 50s still in there. So it's eye-opening to go through some of these facilities, and I just appreciate the set of eyes, additional eyes that we'll have on it. So those are my comments. Not more.
Gentlemen, let me open by, again, reiterating thank you and appreciation for stepping up and helping the community. I'm interested in the scope of this in terms of the findings. Is it more infrastructure and plant related, or will you get into areas, we've talked about the library modifications, and without making recommendations, would you potentially include findings that this is outdated in terms of an instructional type situation, or is the focus going to be more on the physical plant itself?
So it's my understanding that we're not going to be talking or looking into instructional anything. Certainly, from my perspective, library facilities does fall into, I guess, superstructure, that kind of stuff. So I imagine that we'd be looking into that. But in terms of any actual soft teaching, I could certainly be willing to give some insight, but no one wants.
Also, on behalf of the district, again, thank you and thank all the members of the team in that you're obviously dedicating your personal time to this, and everyone's personal time is valuable. We really appreciate it. And just to confirm, I think it's important that this board recognize and maximize this group's independence. And so you can just confirm for us that none of the board members are participating on the committee, no district employees?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, that's excellent. Appreciate it.
So Mark, that's a great point, Chris. The board didn't ask you to do this. This was your idea. We're not paying you to do this. The school district's certainly not paying you to do it. What are kind of our resources? You mentioned Dave Ross, access to buildings.
For the most part, that's all it will be, is that we'll provide you any information you need, just like we would provide anybody the information they need. We'll give you access to the building so you can take a look at it and kind of go from there. One of the things in the referendum that people talked about was that, well, you had the architects telling us you had to do X. And for all the dollars you spend, the architects get additional money because they get a percentage. Or you had the builders telling us you had to do X. And so they become the contractor, and so this really does provide an opportunity, not for an outside recommendation, but they have no vested interest in other than they want to do what's best for our community and our school. And so that really provides some additional credibility. The other thing that I would ask, and I think we talked about that, if you have an opportunity to go and visit, what does the new school at Sheboygan or some of the other places look like. And we certainly aren't asking for a Taj Mahal, but I think it's important to look at what some of the trends are in education. And some of it's just remodeled. And you go, Slinger, I've been over there numerous times, they just did a phenomenal job with their remodeling that Slinger. And so if there's an opportunity to look at a facility or two so that you can have a baseline data for a comparison, that would be extremely beneficial, I believe.
And I believe that, actually, Don, someone just shared information about Sheboygan Falls, I believe.
Sheboygan Falls has a brand new middle school, which would be it's not over the top, but it's a great facility. I said Sheboygan, but it's actually Sheboygan Falls.
So I think Craig had some conversation, that would be an important step perhaps to take a look at a model like that. So,
Yeah, one of our guys has already been there, and I believe the plan is to bring a bunch of them.
yeah. And I also say, throughout this process, if there's any suggestions, any thoughts, any ideas, we're certainly open to those. We obviously want to deliver some findings that you find very helpful and useful to ultimately get us to where we all believe we need to go, so.
Yeah, what's best for education is kind of my big hot button, and walking into a poorly lit classroom and having someone in, you know, I don't know who's on your committee, but having someone on your committee say, well, these lights are all on, they're fine. Well, they should be at 1400 lumens and they're only at 200 and they're not fine, you know, so that's why what's best for education, you guys both work in beautiful facilities, and so you know on a business level, and it's similar, but there are differences, and I think those are things Dave Ross can help with, or if you put, as your team has questions that you have for Laura Jackson or Tim Harder or Don, put them together in a list, and we'll make sure that our people are responsive to you. But thank you very, very much. I mean, this is a heck of an offer that putting a strong group of community people like you together to do this is something we certainly won't turn down, so.
Good.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
I was just wondering what the timeline is.
So our thought was that we'd actually report our findings in October. So that's currently what we're shooting for. So.
Do you think there's any communication that comes out? Are you going to keep things pretty private as you go along, or you said kind of a press release announcing what you're going to do, but do you anticipate any updates along the way?
I think, I'm sure there'll be updates between now and October, but they'll probably be very carefully, I hate to use the term scripted, but very carefully planned so that we don't allow inaccurate communication to go through.
And I think what Tim's saying, certainly nothing to the public. Obviously, whatever we find will be communicated to you.
Good point.
Yeah.
You guys will hear it first.
Yeah, and we know that we have to be careful about, there'll probably be some people that want to know more. But really, it's to you who we're reporting to, and we'll talk about the idea of, is there some things that perhaps along the way we could report.
Which is one of the beautiful things about this being completely private. It's like we can share what we want with who we want.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate the support.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.